All right, excellent afternoon to all those who are watching us across the states in Nigeria. They say credibility and fairness and political correctness are the backbone of any democratic election. And of course, the backbone of any democratic election, I feel that it's essential that voters have faith in the electoral process. And of course, the candidates are treated with equitability and of course, language used that does not actually marginalize or discriminate against any group is part of the fairness that I believe that we should be bringing to the fore today. And again, I say welcome to another interesting episode of Real Talk with Kike. I remain your convener and of course the chief host of this platform, Real Talk with Kike. And of course, you know, my name hasn't changed. My name is Kike Atanda. Regardless of all those people that have been on my matter, you guys should relax. I like my identity, my individual identity. All right, guys, moving on. Let's get to hear more on this day in history segment. Stay with me. I'll be right back.
One notable newsworthy event that occurred on March 9th in Nigeria history was the announcement of the results of the 2019 presidential election. On this day, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, declared incumbent President Muhammadu Buhari as the winner of the election, defeating his main challenger Atiku Abubakar with a margin of over 3 million votes. The 2019 presidential election was a significant event in Nigeria history, as it marked the first time an opposition candidate had come close to unseating an incumbent president in a democratic election. The election was also marred by controversy with allegations of vote rigging and irregularities, which led to legal challenges and protests by opposition supporters. Despite these challenges, the peaceful transfer of power from one government to another was seen as a positive development for Nigeria's democracy.
All right, many thanks for staying with me. Of course, today was the day that they declared President Muhammadu Buhari as the winner of the election, defeating his main challenger, that's Atiku Abubakar, exactly 4 years ago. And it was a demonstration of people's choice in the elections. And I know that Atiku Abubakar has actually, you know, tried to be in that corridor of power for 5 times. He has tried for 5 times, but today, history is telling us that, you know, people have their choices and they need to put the right people in the corridor of power. And I feel that with the gubernatorial election that is coming up now in a week's time, since it has been extended, let me use the opportunity to let people understand that you have the power, the right to vote for whoever you want to put there. So the decision is in your hands, and the future of the person who wants us to rule us in different states also remain in our hands. And with that, I think that I would like to further emphasize that what will you want people to say about you when it comes to your leadership career or ambition is one thing I feel that our political leaders need to learn from. It's time for a quick message from our sponsors. Please stay with me. I'll be right back. All right, today I'm diving into the hot topics of BVAS reconfiguration and of course the election postponement, and it's been an hectic political season. And of course, I'm bringing you the latest on the drama surrounding, you know, the upcoming governorship and of course the state houses of assembly election. And as we see, or as we saw that the appellate court has granted leave to Atiku Abubakar of the PDP and of course Mr. Peter Obi, of course, of the Labour Party to inspect the election materials used by INEC for the presidential election. However, I feel that INEC is now asking the court to, you know, not that I feel, INEC is now asking the court, you know, to verify the order to allow it to reconfigure rather the beavers for the March 11th governorship and of course the state houses of assembly election, which has now been postponed to March 18th, like I initially, mentioned in my on this day in history segment. And before I dive further with our discussion on the election postponement and of course the beavers reconfiguration, I think it's important for me for us to check the profile of our guests before we actually continue the discussion. Stay with me, we'll be right back. All right, welcome to the show, Malachy. It's a pleasure to have you on Real Talk with Kike today again, because I know that you're a regular resource person for me on radio and, of course, on TV. And it has been a marathon day for you with us at Silverbird. But many thanks for always honoring our invites. Let's just go straight to the topic at hand. The court granting these two parties, APC and PDP, or APC and LP and Labour Party, the right to inspect the beavers is like opening the presidential election and INEC to greater amount of controversy, if you ask me. So should we not be having a neutral agency, or would I say an arm of judicial system to do the inspection of the beavers other than the parties involved? Because I just feel that there will be a lot of controversy that this will bring. What's your take on it as a lawyer?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on your program, which is gradually becoming a flagship program. I think in direct response to your question is that the election itself, like I did say somewhere, is a context. And being a context, it is expected that there would be some controversy or disputation regarding the outcome of that context. It is less and almost absent when the processes and the procedure leading up to the declaration of the results are free, fair, and credible. And when you talk about disputation, it is usually between and amongst contestants. So the mechanism we have, the legal regime we have, insists that it is only those who participated, in fact, in all stages of the process, that can contest the outcome. This is precisely why, in most cases, given that under our own jurisprudence, candidates are sponsored by the political parties portion to section 222 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as amended, you usually will have the candidates and the political parties contesting the outcome. In this case, which is somewhat novel, considering the trajectory of our history and the pattern of our electoral development, you're having three political parties, contesting the outcome of the election. It used to be one or at most two. In short, one political party contesting the outcome against the declared winner. But now you have the PDP, you have the APC, you have the PDP, you have the Labour Party contesting the declared result against the APC, joining the Independent National Electoral Commission. So, as it is, the idea you have thrown up in your proposition will introduce a fresh participant. This whole business of election and electoral processes is technically focused at locating, identifying the will of the Nigerian people, the will of the electorates in every election. So where you now suggest that, isn't it best in our circumstance to have a separate independent body who could be engaged in this process of verification, vetting? Then you'll be escalating the challenge. So it is best, again, in the wisdom of the legislators who have crafted our laws, who have developed the legal framework, to limit it to people and parties that participated. And I think that given the enormity of the challenge we have seen and grappled with, no less in recent times, it should be limited to that. Otherwise, find a situation where the challenge is further escalated, further expanded, and even further compounded in a way that makes it almost impossible or much more difficult to resolve.
Insight, but listening to you, I cannot help but ask, because I feel that the proposed reconfiguration of BVAS before gubernatorial election is something that I'm asking myself in 5 days. Yes, it has been extended to 1 week. I feel that there will be a lot of controversy around it, just like I said earlier. And why should INEC be bringing this up, to the people of Nigeria at this time, knowing that we've been planning towards this gubernatorial election for years, for a while now? It's not news to us. So it seems like there's more like an acceptance of failure, so to speak, that the BVAS was kind of faulty in the first place. Hence the reason why it's been deployed like this. What do you think? What's your take on this?
Let's be clear about it, and let's set a few grounds straight, just so that it will be easy to come clearer to our listeners. The first is that if there was an absence of an election petition, no less the two separate petitions by two separate political parties, you and I will not hear about the configuration or resetting of the BVAS. Even if we hear about it, it will not raise as much doubts. It will not cast aspersions. It will not create credibility crisis as we have at the moment. It will be in the course of the discharge of the functions of INEC. It has become a problem because the result that they declared, the election that they conducted, has become a subject of context, further context. by way of election petition, by the way, which has been submitted to the Court of Appeal, being a court of first instance with respect to presidential elections. Now, the second point I wish to make is that where in the wisdom of INEC, and this wisdom is rooted in the powers that they have under the Constitution. I reference Section 158, Section 153 in particular, which created INEC, and more importantly, Item F of the third schedule of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. You could see the very elaborate powers that they have, which is couched in very elastic words and phrases. And their name even confers more powers by pronouncing them, declaring them as an independent commission, electoral commission, that has the responsibility and powers to organize, to conduct, and to, in short, they have powers, as it were, to create their own regulations, which is the framework given to them to develop rules of engagement that takes care of perceived lacunas in both the Constitution and the Electoral Act. Now, coming to the drawback, the flip side of what we're discussing, I cannot agree more with you. A crisis of confidence has been created already. And that is because where such an election monitoring body, election management body, is unable to conclusively, effectively conduct an election and declare the result without the kind of confusion already created, the chances are that you are playing into the hands of the candidates and the contestants. If you go in your right direction, those in the opposite direction will complain. If you decide to go in the opposite direction, those on the other side will complain. This is where we are today. This brings me to the budgetary allocation, the humongous financial support that has gone to INEC within a time frame that was sufficient to get their acts together. For a country with the kind of poverty level already ascribed to us, a country which has been declared as accommodating about 133 million of its citizens in having or living in multi-dimensional poverty. I hope you took a note of that word, multi-dimensional. In other words, we are poor horizontally and poor vertically. For such a country with a GDP that is ranking with banana republics like Bangladesh, South Sudan, and so on and so forth, where youth unemployment is escalating every other year. So devoting approximately 350 billion naira for mainly conducting election has not just become a priority.
I understand what I get to right with all this, with what you're sharing thus far, but you know, I want us to come back to the news reports, because I feel that the situation report, which is a coalition of 70 civil society organization, and PDP rejects INEC bids, or bid to reconfigure beavers machines. You've spoken about multi-dimension of the people. I think that we should also talk about the interest of the people, because the same PDP that is seeking for inspection is against the reconfiguration of the beaver. So how do we harmonize the interest of the people?
I'm a bit lost at that question. What I was saying, if you could come straight on with the question, just so I didn't see the connection, the nexus between harmonizing the interest of the people.
So I was asking that the so-called PDP, if you can hear me now, can you hear me loud and clear? PDP is seeking for inspection, which they have been against in terms of reconfiguration of beavers. So I'm asking you, you spoke about multidimensional of our people in Nigeria. Yes, so I'm asking now about how do we harmonize the interest of the people, especially the PDP?
Well, if you may wish to know, the interest of the people in this instance is the interest of the electorate of this country as represented by the political parties that are canvassing for votes on behalf of their candidates. Now, what the PDP and the Labour Party have done is to rely on the provisions of the Electoral Act and urged the court to grant them leave to be able to inspect, in their view, the most sensitive electoral material in town at the moment, which is the almighty beavers. It is the most sensitive because all of the results collated around the country with respect to the election under review are uploaded, or at least supposed to have been uploaded into that device, stored, documented, and affirmed to be the authentic database of INEC. Do not forget that the re-election takes place at the unit level, at the polling centers, right in the units. And it is also declared there. In other words, by the time you and I have finished casting our vote, the polling officer counts, sorts out the papers, counts them, and the result is declared. The record is known and shared with the party agents. That same result, as duplicated and shared, is what is transmitted to the collation centers, be it the ward level, to the local government level, and state level, before they are taken to the INEC, IRF portals. They are taken to the headquarters. But the law presently now allows an electronic transmission of the same results. The whole idea is to take care of the means and strategies by which politicians have subverted the will of the people, just so that by the time this result is being transmitted or being taken to the next levels of collation, party agents already have them. So, in response to your question, is to say the request that was made not just by PDP, even LP, to inspect, to have access to inspect this sensitive electoral material, which is the beavers now, is not just legitimate, it is also allowed by the law. What INEC is saying is, my lord, these are legitimate requests to be made. But please, in view of the coming election, may we be allowed to reset this same machine, which has been used for the presidential election, to now be programmed to be able to accommodate the governorship and state houses of assembly elections that will occur on a different date, on a different month, and perhaps different number and volume of participation. So that is, as far as that is concerned, the fear that have been exercised by those who have raised objection is to say, in that case, our desire to secure and authenticate what we are going to use as evidence is already under jeopardy. But do not forget that the court came out with an explanation that tends to satisfy both ends. You were granted leave to inspect. You were not granted leave to foreclose the exercise of the power of the election management body. However, you, the election management body, which is INEC, you can only be allowed to configure, provided you will swear to an affidavit ascertaining the state of the data you have at the moment, the credibility of it, the full disclosure that needs to be confirmed to be in the state as they were when you collated them, before you be allowed to transmute it, to transfer it to any device. In other words, go ahead with your so-called configuration, but you must be able to make an undertaking that that which you are taking away from this particular device sought to be inspected will be exactly the same data that will be found anywhere else other than the beavers. And I think that is a middle ground. So if I'm, Kike, the way I conclude therefore is that if I'm now allowed to inspect and I'm able to ascertain that for party A, there were 200 votes. For party B, there were 600 votes. For party C, there were just 300 votes. I will hold it as an evidence, duly authenticated. So if you like, clean off the whole thing, remove it from that device, but it will be in evidence already that it's your certified data. So wherever you take them to and subsequently return it back for the reason of that configuration or resetting, you will own up to what you had earlier submitted. Because if you recall, in the Osun State,
because we are running out of time. But with all that you've shared thus far, are you there? Can you hear me? Are you there?
Election. Yes, I am. Sorry about that.
All right, fantastic. Fantastic. Many thanks for your elaborate submission right there. But I want to talk about the court of law now, because Tinubu, Atiku, Peter Obi hired 89 sons all together for legal battle. You know, Tinubu alone have 49 legal representatives. I'm here to confirm if you are one of those lawyers that that is part of the team of their attorney. You know, I want you to actually confirm that that's just a joke. But what should Nigerians be expecting from the showdown at the court of law with the number of sons that all the three parties have been able to put together to fight for their votes? What's your take on this?
Okay. Well, let me deal with the more important one. I imagine that the question was a rhetorical question regarding my involvement. The important thing to note is that we have pushed and advocated and argued that we must try, difficult as it is, to reduce the judicialization of our election processes. Please, the technical point must be pushed out there that the whole essence of an election as a process of galvanizing or gauging the interest of the people is to be able to locate the will of the people on behalf of whom the election is conducted everywhere in the world, not just in Nigeria. So the idea is that the will of the people can only be ascertained through the ballot boxes and not the discretion and understanding of very few selected people who superintend the election petitions, election tribunals. In short, if you put them together, tribunal after tribunal, in addition to the 21 justices of the Supreme Court, if you ever had the full complement of justices at the Supreme Court, it would be a very far cry from the number of people who participated. In other words, you now have an electoral college. You now have the tyranny of the minority, if you don't mind. So we must do everything to reduce it. The second point is that you don't need a community of lawyers. When I say community, in the number that is banded now, 50, 100, in the courts, in the tribunals, the right of audience is granted to just one of them. It is appreciated and accepted that the idea is a teamwork where the causes of action and the reliefs and the articulation of the case could come, piecemeal from everyone involved with the team. But at the end of the day, it is a legal practitioner, albeit a senior advocate of Nigeria, who will lead that team and interface with the tribunal with the earlier contribution of his colleagues backstage. So the only interesting aspect of it, the only good aspect of it, is that rather than resorting to self-help and physical violence to redress what is perceived to be electoral injustices, you now have panel of judges and justices superintending over tribunals to objectively and dispassionately, as expected, look into the matters.
Right there. But quickly, before I go on a break, I would like you to answer this question in 1 minute, if it's possible. Is the fact that with all that you have shared thus far, I feel that if the court ruling goes against the president-elect, do you think APC will relinquish or give up the mandate? What sort of impact do you think it will have on Nigeria? I, for one, I don't see it happening that, they'll be able to give up that power. And I just feel that, if I'm allowed to have an opinion, that, we should just let peace reign and everybody should come together. But do you think that APC can actually, relinquish their mandates? What's your take on this in 1 minute?
It is not much about choice or what they elect to do. It is by far more a question of law. And in this regard, I'm referencing section 287, subsection 1 and 2. This is the provision of the Constitution that declares the respect, obedience, and enforcement of court orders as mandatory responsibility of every Nigerian, every institution, every government or establishment, every political actor. Indeed, every court, lower in rank to the one that I've referenced now, that's the Supreme Court and Court of Appeal. That provision of the Constitution makes it peremptory, mandatory, obligatory, compulsory that judgments of court must be obeyed. However, you were spot on when you say you don't see it coming. I personally was very excited with what has happened with this election. In the first place, it offered Nigerians choices, much more than we've had in the past. It also threw up certain surprises that demonstrates a shift from the original pattern of politics and elections in our country. And thirdly, points in the direction of a very progressive development and possibility that are bound within our polity, which is that you just need to be popular and acceptable to win election. Otherwise, what has happened or what happened in this election, with all the criticism, if you take some quiet time off, step backwards, you will see some radical departure from where we are. So finally, it's not so much, why I said you were spot on is because go and check the history of election petitions, particularly presidential election context. We've not seen a reversal. In short, in the case of Buhari, we went to Supreme Court 3 times, and 3 times he failed. The only thing that altered the whole narrative was that he won in the field in 2015, and by far more than that, had a Jonathan who conceded victory, and that was the end of.
Interrupt your line of thought. So, I have to interrupt your line of thought. If you can hear me, I apologize. I have to interrupt your line of thought. We'll have to go on a quick break, then we'll return and the conversation continues. Stay with me. All right, glad to know you're still with us. In case you just joined the show, today's conversation is about the postponement of the next elections in the connection to, the appellate court granting approval to Atiku Abubakar of the PDP and, of course, to Mr. Peter Obi of the Labour Party to inspect the election materials, including the beavers used by INEC for the presidential election. And, of course, we are also, we have a Nigerian lawyer and public affairs activist who is one of our resource person on this platform, Mr. Malachy, is with us, and he has been giving us many insights to the conversation. But quickly, for those who are watching us at home, remember that you can be part of this conversation by calling the studio number 08098877400 showing on your screen right now. And of course, we are, we are live on Silverbell platform and Real Talk with Kike, both on Facebook and of course on YouTube platform. Mr. Malachy, many thanks for all that you've shared thus far. But quickly, what's your take with Tinubu's lawyer Akintola Makinde that said that the materials, that he gained from the inspection will be relevant in helping us to prepare his defense, and also make comparison with the information contained with INEC. I think there's a back-end server, so to speak, according to them. What's your take with his statement?
Sorry, if you could repeat that again. I couldn't hear you properly.
Okay, so what I asked was that, we have the what's it called now? The lawyer, one of the lawyers from Tinubu, who said that all the collation of their results, that is Makinde, all the collation of their results from the materials that they gain in terms of inspecting the relevant defense that they will be putting up at the court of law, that he has been able to gather it because there is a back-end server that they can use in terms of in defense to the results that INEC has provided. What's your take with your colleague, Mr. Makinde?
Oh, well, that's a very technical, valid legal point to make. First and foremost, let us be clear that even APC, against whom the election petition is instituted as a respondent, also made the same application, namely that they want to inspect this same storage facility known as the beavers. And that is permissible under the law. Of course, you are aware that that application was granted. But speaking directly to the statement you have accredited to our colleague, the senior advocate, it makes a lot of sense. In short, the fact that the same database which you seek to inspect also exists in the backup device makes the whole exercise, it promises to be a very interesting one, because what is the issue now is to what extent are these figures and data going to match with each other and correspond, just so that what it is you have from the collation centers as they move from state to state, coming up to the headquarters, to what extent are they the same with what is uploaded onto the beavers? And how can you reconcile that in terms of accurate figures with what is contained in the backup facility, as my learned colleague has suggested? But perhaps to throw in a legal point there. You see, in the law of evidence and in the procedure as obtained in our courts, no less in the tribunals, go get your evidence anywhere and by whatever means. It is the content of that piece of evidence that is important to the court once it is relevant and admissible, much more relevant and admissible in court. The means by which you got it is usually not an issue. So if he makes that point, and that statement which you have attributed to him, my mind as a lawyer is already triggered in the direction of what he's saying. And he puts every person on alert and on notice, which is that do not think that it's a one-way traffic. The same thing you seek to ascertain will be what we, on our own part, would wish to establish with these corresponding data as are available to us. And as
apologies, I have to interrupt your line of thoughts quickly. We have Mike on the line calling from Imo State. Mike, many thanks for calling. What's your contribution on the topic at hand? Please make it fast. Are you there, Mike?
My contribution there is
volume of your TV set, please. All right.
My contribution is this.
Please, can you turn on the
volume
of the
legal
TV set?
Man talking. I want to ask, is the professor of the INEC, the chairman of the INEC?
Apologies, I have to let this go. Mr. Malachy, with all that you've shared thus far, going by what Nigerians saw online that were posted, they were pulling units in Lagos as result from Nasarawa State, were posted on INEC portal according to them from what we saw on socials. By the time the facts and evidences were received from their own inspections, they were saying that quite a number of people could not have access. Could Nigerians be holding INEC responsible for the damage made if evidence, indicts them, so to speak?
Well, every human being has got a sense of judgment based on his or her conscience. You see, this country has suffered so much. No less we who are right in the country as victims of all of the malfeasance and dysfunctionalities that we see and bear. So anyone and everyone who has the privilege to be identified and assigned with a responsibility as huge as such sensitive national assignment, to superintend over organizing the fate of the country should do the best. It might well be that Professor Mahmoud may have meant very well. It might be, given the creativity, the resolve, resilience, determination, and the effort, apparent effort that we saw deployed to ensure that this time around we get it right. But you and I cannot completely disregard and discountenance the continuous presence of the fifth columnist, as well as spoilers in our system and in our polity. The reason why people would want to hold him responsible, just as we hold President Buhari responsible, and as we did with Jonathan, is that the buck stops at their decks, on their decks, by their decks, at their decks. So there is no running away from it. The fact that you meant well doesn't mean you landed well. In short, the measure of your intention to do well will be proportional to the success you recorded. So even if you came long in your avowals and promises and assurances, and then came short in delivery, chances are that it will be interpreted against you that you never intended to succeed. So I guess I feel the heat of your question. It is that a Jega who had 4 years, enough resources, up to the point where they said that isn't their problem. In short, on the basis of which they came out, particularly
Apologies, Mr. Malachy. Many thanks for all your submission thus far, and I pray that there will be peace as we move forward, as all the sons in the country are actually defending the three candidates with this presidential election. However, before I let you go, there's this trending story that that I bring to fall on my TV program. So we and I will be dissecting this trending story, and the first trending story that caught my attention is that of the BRT bus this morning. And the BRT bus and the train collision that took place this morning. And I want your take on this. What's your take on it thus far with what you've seen? There are quite a number of reactions on social media regarding the rail line in Lagos. What's your take on this?
That's a very unfortunate occurrence this morning. Granted that it has been categorized or characterized as an accident, traffic rail accident. However, the preliminary reports and snippets that are filtered into the public is the utter recklessness of the BRT driver, who we understand had veered off, albeit indiscriminately, from his own lane, and did not respond to all the calls and all the signs and every effort to respect the oncoming train. It's even understood that the train driver saw it off, from afar, and started blaring the horn of the train in a way to attract his attention that this was an oncoming train. The poverty of the situation is that at least 3 lives, 2 female and a male, have been confirmed lost in this unfortunate, avoidable incident. Up to about
trying
8.
to manage time here. Many thanks for even bringing it to fall about the number of people that have died in the last few hours that the news broke. But there's a need that I feel that I need to bring to fore now is about our mental health. You know, the mental health of the people that are in charge of people's lives in our country. And this is not, you know, restricted to just bus drivers alone, but it's also restricted to quite a number of sectors, which is the doctors, the engineers, the builders, even with the media practitioners. You know, we have a very poor culture with safety and standards, you know, in our country. And this is not the first time that we are having such a mishap and great tragedy. But let me quickly, give you some reports, you know, some of the news that I've gathered, you know, in terms of the scene, at the scene of the incident. They said that many cars, you know, stopped when they got to they got to the level where people are crossing, while Lagos State staff bus actually, the Lagos State staff bus driver actually continued moving, which we don't know why the driver at this point in time was obviously not, you know, in a good state of mind or mental correctness, so to speak, you know, for him to actually see that people are stopping, but he still continued to drive. So in a senior countries where there is working system with the priority of lives and safety of the people, you know, you dare not, you know, show up to work when you are not in a good frame of mind. You dare not even, overdose, or would I say break laws that involve the lives of others. Our leaders, our politicians, you and I, you know, Mr. Malachy, we travel abroad, you know, we go to all these developed countries, and we kind of, you know, want to replicate that in our own system, but we also try to also follow law and order when we go to other people's country. Yes, when it comes to our own, it seems as if we fail. And quickly, the second aspect of this for me is the fact that I feel that, you know, it is either irony of our people when they need to have a strict measure and law. We hear people complaining and wanting to, try to want to, beat the system one way or the other, and it's just a sorry case for me. And on a final note, before they start running commentary in my ears, you know, there must be a proper review, if you ask me, when it comes to the railway or the national railway operation and the exclusivity of their tracks and their passengers, because abroad, you never can see, you will never see something like this happen, and it's just unfortunate that, you know, things like this do happen. We see how the underground and the overground, that things like this do not happen. It is only in areas where trams use, and of course they're strictly guided, and it's strictly guided by the traffic controls. But I believe that we can do better. I believe that we need to do better, and my condolences to the family of those who have died in the ugly incident. I wish them I wish those people who are injured quick recovery, and may God, you know, perfect all that concerns us in Nigeria, because sometimes until certain things happen to you in Nigeria, things are never get done. And on this note, this is where I draw the curtains of the show. Apologies, I actually couldn't treat the second trending story because of time, you know, and I want to say many thanks, Mr. Malachy, for constantly honoring my invite, and I pray that God will continue to perfect all that concerns you. On this note, till I come your way next week, remember to be kind to one another, and remember that election is next, so you have to go out there, you know, to vote for the right person you want, so that we can have the change that we all crave for by now. My name is Ms. Kike Atanda-Owo.